How much control should a cop have out over their subject? Complete control, complete, total, utter control, half control, or no control? Here's where I'm coming on this. I don't think anybody should hold 100% control over you as long as you're healthy. If you're suffering in sickness, if you got in an accident, you're knocked out, there's a temporary period where the person should have some control over you, get you to safety, help you get better, get well in some way, maybe through blood injections or water, saline. But if you're healthy, you got to assert your own control. You can't give somebody else 100% control, because you have to establish that you are able to make your own decisions, function in your own way as you always have before the interaction. So asserting your own control will serve as a negotiation against, say, a police officer's control. And for example, in my situation in Abernathy, I may have given the cop too much control, but it seemed reasonable, the type of control that I gave him. I'm new in town. I don't know the area. I wanted to learn a little bit more about the culture. I mainly just walk around and look at places, but talking to the cops can give you some insights into the criminal activity in that area. But usually when they're focused on you and trying to figure you out, they're going to lie or sidestep questions about criminal activity in their city, their town, village. You're able to go to police stations and ask, how's the crime? Where's the crime the worst? And you can get some answers. When I was in college back in 2000, I did like an ethnography in Barron, Wisconsin, about the Somalians. And I was like, how do I find them? If I wanted to sit and watch them and make notes about their activities for an hour, how do I find them? And the professor said, just go to the police station and ask where they're at. Ask where the crime is at, and they'll tell you. And they did. They said, go over here. After when I went to the police station, go over here, and there they were. The Somalians were staying in this big apartment complex kind of outside the city, and we could just, me and another guy sat and watched as part of an ethnography. We weren't cops. We were just doing a college project for is ethnography for it was an anthropology 101 class. Ethnographies, sitting and watching people is a part of that. But how much control, when a cop approaches you, do you give that cop? Because if you gave him 100% control, outside of you being if you're unhealthy in some way, you have no. If you're dead, I mean, you're not really even a person anymore anyway. But you got to give them 100% control to drag you out and take you to the morgue. If you're healthy, though, you got to watch for, you got to push back against the potential for them taking advantage of their power, and that could be lying about laws. It could be about making unreasonable demands. You can always verbally dispute, and that's what you have to do in court. All right, your silence does not exactly help you in court proceedings in a lot of ways. Objection, irrelevant. Disputing some issues that are questionable is very much a part of the judicial system, but then suddenly we're told to be silent on the streets. And in some cases, being silent can help. If you murdered somebody, if you started a fire somewhere, you stole something. I was just reading about uh, in Lubbock. If you can go to the courthouse and read their warrants that were approved by the judge. I think every courthouse keeps a binder at the court, not reporter, at the clerk of courts. They keep a binder you can look at. You just request and say, hey, I'd like to look at your binder of warrants that were approved. And I saw in one, there was a house burglary in September with 4 kids, and they were caught by the cops, and one or a couple confessed, saying, "Yep, that's where I was. That's what I was doing." The lookout who was driving the car confessed, "Yeah, I was the one driving." They all confess. That's where silence is very important when you're in that, but at that level of mentality with those types of criminals, you're not reaching people like that to tell them to be silent. But the people who know to be silent are telling each other the people who know under what circumstances they should be silent about are telling each other. It's like like-minded people advising like-minded people. We already know there's the people who really are just in such a criminal element, and their mentalities is grounded in breaking the law. They're the ones who need to be reached, but a lot of times they can't. They're the ones who need to be silenced. The ones who commit the murders, the robberies, the burglaries, the stupid crimes that happen. They're the ones who need to be kept silent. But people who are minding their own business, what would I confess to? What do I need to worry about? I didn't commit any crimes. I'm just, for example, in Abernathy, I was just sitting in my car I'm told to be silent. It's best to speak with other people about that. You don't need to talk to me about that because I committed no crimes. I don't need to be silent. I'm going to object to the accusations. And that's where I'm taking control away from the cop. Innocent people will tend to take control away from the cop. And you'll see that when you watch Jim Can't Swim's interrogations, because a lot of times the people who have committed the murder and are asked some certain questions, they don't protest. They don't say, hey, that wasn't me, I wasn't there. They're like, how can you prove it? Or so they'll be a little more defensive, whereas innocent people can be a little more offensive. And that's why I take more of an offensive approach to these accusations. All right, I'm turning around and blaming them. The guilty person, they're going to be overwhelmed by their guilt and then defensive. An innocent person is not going to be so defensive about it and overwhelmed by guilt on top of that, and also having to memorize lies, lie after lie. I don't have to do that. All right, being silent helps people who lie a lot, helps the guilty, the actual guilty, the ones who actually commit crimes, the murders and all of that. So I can assert myself, and I don't need to give, and I don't want to give cops 100% control. That's for the guilty people. That's for convicted people. I'm going to assert my rights, and that gives me control, and that pushes back. So you don't give cops 100% control, especially when you're innocent. 100% control. It's just, there's differences in how you assert your own control. Okay. I focus verbally. I verbally protest, and I don't mind getting them to the point where they'll be like, oh, where did you get your law degree? Because then you know you're getting somewhere with your protesting. You're letting them know that this is really ridiculous. There's certain points you want to get that cop to. You want to get them calling the supervisor themselves, and you want them to start making dumb questions like, where did you get your law degree? Making those types of protests will take away some of the power from that cop when you haven't done anything wrong, and when they're alleging that you've done all these, you could be doing all these alleged things. Oh, you're parked next to a business, you could be robbing it, something like that. It's these ridiculous statements. You want to assert your own control in place of theirs, because theirs is a little crazy. All right, it's a little wild. Their imaginations are running wild. They don't know what to think of you. So you have to. When they make those crazy assumptions. Oh, you're parked in the parking lot on the side of the street. When they're making these crazy assumptions, you have to assert some control verbally, and let them know that you're in control. You don't have to be 100%. Like when I was in Hayden, Colorado, and that cop said, I'm in control, I think I pushed the issue a little too far by saying, in turn, I'm in control. But he heard his own words, and he was like, oh, oh my God, this guy is really combative. I'm just repeating his words. I could have questioned, okay, what kind of control do you think you're in? I could have asked that. That was something that, if something like that happens again, or like, I'm the law, those statements, I'm the law, I'm in control. You have to ask, do you really understand? Do you really? No, I don't like the question. It's too general. Do you really understand the law? Well, the obvious answer is going to be yes. Do you believe that this is the law, the people that represents the people? Do you believe that the law that you're using against me is the most appropriate one? Maybe some question like that. Making sure that you can assert control. It's like fighting percentages in a way. You can assert it by questions. You put them in the spot, because cops, when they're making charges, when they're investigating you, they're involved. They're heavily involved in conversation. They're all about engagements, verbally, back and forth. All right, you ask them a question, they ask you a question. You're just firing back and forth these questions. It can get kind of brutal and embarrassing and demeaning. Okay, it could get low. They'll go there. They'll go in the rabbit hole. So I've actually watched a YouTube video. The cop said, I'll go in the rabbit hole with you. That's what they do. They go in the rabbit holes, the gopher holes. They'll be the snake going into those holes. So you got to expect that. If they'll get to the point where it's embarrassing. They'll embarrass you. Oh, you look like you're living in your car. All right. And then I respond, I like the response. There could be a better one. Well, why don't we go to your car and make comments about it? They'll go in that rabbit hole. All right. The lawyers will go in that rabbit hole. That's the judicial system. The judicial system is a big rabbit hole that they'll all like lemmings follow into. They'll all jump into the hole with you. And you can get pretty dirty. It can get pretty dirty, because that's what criminals are dirty. I mean, they'll stab somebody 50. A criminal will stab somebody 50 times and then toss the knife in the garbage, and it's up to cops to piece through all that garbage for the knife and have to deal with the smells of the murder. They'll go in that rabbit hole. But if you're innocent, you want to assert yourself a little bit more. Lawyers tell you to be silent. If you're willing to pay $1,500, and if it really is a crime so serious that you're being accused of, that's really, if you have to lie and memorize lies, then yes, being silent would help. But in my situations, a lot of times I'm just sitting in my car or standing in front of a library. I don't see any reason to be silent, and yet I'm still getting those comments. And they're saying give the cop the power, give it all to them. Just do what they say and all of that. There's a point where it's enough is enough, because the cops have found when I have been gracious with offering them all information and ID and stuff, they'll just push for more, and it practically comes down to get out of our town. So I'm gonna push back because I don't like that. I'm tired of being told to go here or stay away from here. Just get out of here. You're not welcome here. Well, I want to make them feel unwelcome in their own town, and I'll investigate them after the interaction. I'll investigate them during. I've never asked them about their families, but I mean, it's getting to that point where I'm getting more comfortable digging in as I keep getting harassed from city to city. It's not every city. Some cities are very relaxed, like this one. This one's not too bad, but others, you really have to push back, and you can't give cops 100%. So how much control do you give them? Well, I'd say just enough to do their job. All right, I'll get up out of my car. I won't refuse that unless if I have a medical condition where I can't get up. If I'm sick, if it really is a hazard to get up in some way, stepping into rain, possibly. I've done that too. I've stepped into rain, and just stood there in the rain talking with cops outside my car. It's a real inconvenience, and you got to weigh the difference between what's more in the public interest in comparison to your inconvenience. Is it okay to stand out and have to talk with cops when there's a tornado approaching? Some outside factors have to give you a guide on how to give cops the most power. I mean, if there's a building fire and they're telling you to get back in the building, there's situations where you have to disobey. Because it could be more harmful for you to follow their orders. In the military, you got to follow orders, whether it's harmful or not. They tell you, go fight that, go shoot that enemy, go attack that enemy. It could get you killed, but that's what you signed up for. But that's in the military. This is civilian life, and you can push back.